Senior Sustainability Strategist at thinkPARALLAX. Please put your hands together for Laura Rankin. I'll use this mic. I'll give it to you in a second. Thank you. Next up, dear collaborator and friend, also somebody who has been in this space and working with communities all over the world, super well-traveled, one of the most technical tourism people I know, the Senior Director of Operations and Head of Impact at Planeterra. Please put your hands together for Kelly Galaski. Also came from far away, BC, Colorado. Next, I'm excited to get a little bit more regional here and welcome the incredible Field Campaigns Manager for Massachusetts and Oceania. That is Nancy Downs. Welcome on up here, Nancy. Thank you so much for being here. And last but not least, literally couldn't be from closer by, he runs the soon-to-be-opened and is the co-founder of Love Farms, Cape Cod, an incredible farm-to-table event venue and restaurant, and I'm excited for him to tell you a little bit more about that and what they do on the regenerative agriculture side. Please put your hands together for Mr. Dylan Leary.
Thank you. Thanks for that, Wes. Good morning. Buenos dias. How are we doing? Okay, we'll work with that. I know it's day 2 of a conference, lots of energetic conversations happening. We got into some pretty heavy topics yesterday, and I think during a conference it can be difficult to sort of step away and reflect and integrate a little bit of what you learned. So I wanted to just quickly kick off our session today by sharing a few of my key takeaways from yesterday, because I think they set us up nicely for what we're talking about here. So a few acknowledgements. The first one, to borrow from Sam and others, we're not talking about tourism at the World Tourism Forum. We're talking about livelihoods and resilience, and you can't have a thriving community if only some constituents are thriving and others are barely surviving. We want to acknowledge the importance of telling the right stories and inspiring positive actions rather than instilling despair or fear. We want to acknowledge that intersectionality is the way forward, and there's already a lot of incredible work that's being done. And my last acknowledgement is that I am by far the least interesting person on this stage, so I want to turn it right over to y'all. We'll be talking about how SMEs and communities are the key to climate resilience. So I'll kick us off here. Nancy, can you tell us a little bit about how climate change impacts coastal communities and what's at stakes for communities on the coast?
Sure, thank you. And Cape Kid, Grandpa built a place here in 1947, so just a lot of passion and love for this place, but also someone who can't afford it, so I have to rent it in order to afford it, and I enjoy the shoulder seasons like now. What's at stake? It's all of it, right? And when Leslie spoke yesterday, it resonated a lot with me about this gift. And I want all of you to think of your tourism destinations and what is the gifts that come from those unique places. So Cape Cod, it's our 550 miles of coastline. It's our locally sourced seafood. It's one of the top destinations for whale watching in the world and has one of the highest aggregations of great white sharks here off of the national seashore. So climate threatens those delicate sandbars and beaches that we have. We're watching homes right now fall off the edge of the coast in Wellfleet. The shifting sandbars don't look the same in Chatham that they did when I was a kid. We have more increased storms. We've had tornadoes blow through Cape Cod, which was not a thing when I was a kid. Seafood with climate change, the species are migrating. You heard from the chamber, both Nova Scotia and here, about the lobsters migrating. Other species migrate. It interrupts their feeding. It interrupts their mating. With whale watching, you heard about the North Atlantic right whales. They traditionally would stop around the Nova Scotia-Maine border at an island called Grand Manan. That is not the case today. Now they go further into the Gulf of St. Lawrence. So that's changing their migration pattern. It's putting them at risk. They're now migrating through really heavy shipping lanes, and they're getting hit by speeding vessels. And the sharks are coming here because the Gulf of Maine is warming. So they're not only coming here because of that, but they're also staying here longer. This could be a good and a bad thing, right? People come here to see the sharks. People come here to see the whales. But it's reflecting on what we've had in the past, what we have now, and what do we want it to look like in the future. So those are just some, highlights of what's at stake, really all of it. So,
Thank you.
okay.
Kelly, we'll go to you next. Can you tell us a little bit about how the communities that you work with are reimagining tourism for a changing climate?
Sure. So at Planeterra, simply what we do is work with rural communities, grassroots nonprofit organizations, and microenterprises to develop community tourism experiences and connect them to the tourism industry, to the broader supply chain through travel company partners. And what we're seeing is more and more communities are looking to tourism to support their nature restoration efforts and their climate adaptation efforts. And so both through direct funding of nature-based solutions, ecosystem restoration from the travel companies who are wanting to invest in the restoration and the destination preservation in the places they operate, but also by creating experiences for the visitors that are directly related to their restoration efforts. So whether that's planting trees or mangroves or seagrasses or restoring coral reefs or other wildlife habitats, they're leveraging tourism to support their efforts to regenerate nature and increase their livelihoods.
Great, thank you. And Dylan, please tell us what you're up to and how at Love Farms you are integrating resilience and regeneration into everyday business.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So I am just very blessed to be stewarding this amazing project. We are about 5 years into building this, and in just about 6 weeks, we're going to be finally opening to the public. So our property is about 2.5 miles from here. It's in West Dennis, and it is a small, working, organic, regenerative farm, and we are almost done building a beautiful, brand new 10,000 square foot farm-to-table restaurant and event space. And we are also a part of the Pelham Hospitality Group, and so this property and our property are sister properties, if you will, and we are super excited to be working with the team, and so many exciting things going into opening, and we can't wait to showcase everything that we're doing. It has been quite the journey to get here. As Mark was just explaining, there is a long history of agriculture on Cape Cod, but unfortunately, with all the development, it's a lot of that has gone away. And so we have just been really lucky to be able to buy an old family farm, essentially, and it was a little overgrown in certain parts. They weren't doing the best job at keeping up with everything, and it wasn't in full production. And so it's been a long couple of years kind of reining the land back in and getting it fully functional. So we're growing diversified vegetables. In years past, we've been selling at farmers markets because the restaurant hasn't been open, but we're growing over 100 different varieties of vegetables, herbs, edible flowers, all kinds of things, in addition to raising heritage pigs, laying hens, and a couple goats as well. And so we've really created a really exciting kind of farm-to-table ecosystem where, guests are going to be able to come, they can have a meal in the restaurant, and they can also come take a farm tour. Our restaurant experiences will be everything from, just casual breakfast, lunch, and dinner to, like multi-course chefs tasting menus where we really kind of go deep into the stories of the ingredients and have like a really refined experience that's really connected to our farm and all of our awesome partner farms across New England.
Congratulations. I'm very excited to come see the goats, personally.
Yeah, they're awesome.
All right, thank you all for setting the context. Another thread that I want to pull on from yesterday is during the housing panel, we talked about the idea of housing as infrastructure versus commodity. So something that we want to talk about a little bit today is how communities serve as infrastructure when it comes to climate mitigation and adaptation. So Kelly, maybe I'll start with you since you're right here. How does community tourism contribute to resiliency in terms of ecosystems and economies in the short and long term?
Sure. So what, quite simply, communities invest their income from tourism into things that make their lives better. So what we're seeing in our annual impact research, including a lot of social impacts, of course, of creation of jobs, creation of new enterprises, using income for education of children and youth, and growth in women's leadership and equitable opportunities in leadership roles. And we're also seeing direct investment by the community tourism enterprises into nature restoration, whether that's in their own projects that they're leading in their communities, or if they're a larger kind of organization working with another local organization so they're taking that income and funding directly nature restoration. They're seeing that they need to also just by virtue of the experiences they're offering and the ability to continue having people come to their place, they are looking at all of the impacts and ways to preserve that for the future. So in terms of ecosystem resilience, our research is telling us that close to 60% of our global community tourism network, that's over 500 community tourism organizations, are investing directly in nature restoration in their communities. And more than 60% are actually offering experiences that are reconnecting people with nature. And more than 87% are supporting their local economies, supporting sustainable supply chains. They're essentially creating their own resilience by directly supporting local businesses, local farms, through all of their purchases, and that's all through their income through community tourism. And I'll also say that we're seeing a kind of shift in the way the tourism industry is wanting to support these kinds of community-led programs, the interest in supporting destination stewardship directly, so kind of moving away from the more out-of-sight carbon offset type of programs, but into direct destination restoration, working that has a dual benefit to both the nature and the communities that are in the places that they're operating. And so the more investment in that there is, of course, the more tourism is bringing that connection to nature and having that virtuous cycle, really, of livelihood generation as well as nature restoration.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. I love the point that you make about travel and tourism as a way to connect people and place in nature. Because I know yesterday we were talking a little bit about accounting and reporting, and I think we've seen time and time again, it's not the data or the metric that's going to change people's minds and hearts, especially when it comes to an issue like climate change. It's an experience that does that, right, or a human connection. So I think the work that you all are doing is so important in that. Nancy, would love to hear from you next. Can you tell us about how you've seen local actors functioning as infrastructure for adaptation on the coast, and how ocean conservation specifically can help mitigate climate impacts?
Okay. I want to give an example. I do better storytelling, not throwing out a whole lot of data. So I have a story about the town of Falmouth. You heard over the past day and a half, the Cape is really leading the way on reducing the sale and use of single-use plastics. So impressive, because we are like a little mini island nation. We don't have a lot of resources for waste management. We don't have tons of space for landfills. One town in particular is the town of Falmouth, has really gone above and beyond, in my opinion. They've done the bag ban, they've done the styrofoam ban, they've done the straw ban, they've banned bottles, they've banned even the little alcohol nip bottles. And so as an environmental advocacy group, we want to go and highlight and celebrate that. and educate people in that community, like what else can they do. So I guess as you're listening, in your own community, thinking about the actors in your own backyard that are doing the right thing and partnering with them across sectors, right, to celebrate the good work and highlight that. So I reached out both to the West Falmouth Chamber of Commerce, who offered to host the event, the West Falmouth Public Library, who gave us the space, the person in the community that led the ask to do this foam foodware, you know, to strengthen their foam foodware ban with the restaurants. Then Surfrider Foundation's another nonprofit that works with restaurants to turn them into an ocean-friendly restaurant, and they have a whole checklist that restaurants can follow to make sure they're ocean-friendly. And Oceana works at the local, state, and federal level on public policies, whether you're banning styrofoam in one community, at the state level, or federally. So we did an Earth Month film screening about plastic pollution and how it not only impacts the environment but public health. It's kind of a shocking downer of a film. But we had a really happy ending story about this community coming together across restaurants, chambers, politicians. Oh, and we had a city council person. But what was interesting is at the end of the film, everyone was all worked up. This is terrible. Falmouth is doing the right thing. Like, what else can we do? Very few people in the room learned that Massachusetts still doesn't have a styrofoam ban. We don't have a plastic bag ban. We don't have a straw ban. And federally, their Cape Cod representative, their congressman, Bill Keating, has still not signed on to the Farewell to Foam Act, which would be a federal ban on styrofoam in the United States. So it gives us an opportunity to look at what we're doing locally, celebrate it, get it in the news, educate the community, everybody's participating, but then taking that power of the voice from the individual to the next level of getting involved. And reducing plastic is obviously, if folks don't know, it's made from petrochemicals. We use it once, we throw it away, it goes into landfills, or it's incinerated, which then second go around continues to contribute to climate problems. So that's one way of local actors coming together to mitigate climate change.
Yeah, you're a great storyteller. I think it's a really powerful example. I like how you talk about sort of the fractal. It's a voice, and then it can scale on the local level to regional to even federal action, which can be quite challenging, but really shows the impact of small-scale action. So Dylan, as somebody who is quite literally building something from the ground up, would love to hear your perspective on where you see any kinds of systemic gaps that hinder the type of work that you're doing, or climate work, whether it's finance, policy, anything from your perspective.
Yeah, definitely. So I think one of the biggest things I've noticed since kind of getting into food and agriculture, and specifically diving into the food system, is that we are very disconnected from our food these days, and that's something that's happened fairly quickly over the last couple decades. And our agricultural system has changed really, really dramatically. We've kind of had this trend of kind of get big or get out, and so we've had a lot of consolidation. We've had a lot of industrialization, and so now a lot of our agricultural systems are completely reliant on chemical inputs and these massive amounts of transportation infrastructure. And the food system is also a pretty major contributor to climate change and to emissions. And the way that we're farming our land is very important, and it can either be a great source of emissions, or our soils can actually be incredible carbon sinks. And so farming can either be very destructive or very regenerative, and it's really just a matter of education. It's a matter of techniques and these different ways that farmers are going about it, especially on the large scale. In terms of kind of systemic issues, I think COVID really showed us how fragile our food system is, right? So we have just such large producers, such large meat processors, for example. And so when something devastating happens in our world, we see how quickly some of these systems just basically shut down, and grocery store shelves become empty, and that's a really big problem. And when you look at a place like this, we are on this beautiful landmass, but we are just connected by 2 bridges, and God forbid anything happened to those bridges. I mean, 2 million people here in the summertime, like that's a lot of food that we are bringing over those bridges every single day. And unfortunately, what was once a very agriculturally rich place, there's now like very, very little food production happening on the Cape. And so I think that's really important to think about. And our project, my farm is very small, and it's kind of just a drop in the bucket in terms of how much food we can produce for how many residents or guests are on Cape Cod. But I think just bringing this conversation to the forefront is just really important, because the more we kind of highlight this, and the more that small and medium-sized producers feel empowered to, get back into production or start new farms or expand production, and the kind of systems that need to go with that to support that, I think is really huge.
Yeah, thank you. Definitely building a really powerful example and case study for folks here in a unique environment. So I think we've dug into some challenges and would like to flip it and talk a little bit about opportunity and different actions that we can take to try and help these SMEs thrive. So Kelly, to start with you, you work with a lot of different stakeholders within your work. So how do you see opportunities for DMOs, travel companies, funders, and governments to collaborate more effectively in order to support SMEs?
Sure. I wanted to point to a resource that we developed with Tourism Cares. It's called Community Tourism 101, but it's really all about that, all the different roles of all the different sector players and what they can each specifically do. So we broke it down very by role, DMO, or by sector really, what hotels can do, what travel companies can do, but just provide some examples here for each of those parts of the sector. Bridging the gap, identifying the community organizations, whether those are micro, small, medium enterprises, nonprofit organizations that could be connected to the broader tourism industry, and help them connect to the tourism marketplace. Investing in capacity building by as tourism experts, burgeoning tourism enterprises that are coming from maybe a farming space or an ocean conservation space could use some capacity building around tourism operations if they want to utilize tourism to bring in income to their organizations. And you have that expertise in the private sector, so providing that direct training or programs to improve readiness for the market. Investing in research, that market research, that data that's so important for small enterprises, being that bridge to help those enterprises gain access to that research, and then also understanding how to measure their success and measure impacts. Highlighting, of course, promoting, utilizing that marketing prowess to highlight those local experiences, and then including them, making sure anytime you're doing a FAM trip or a press trip that you're looking at how you can incorporate those organizations into your experiences and with the media. And looking at your policy and regulatory environment, ways to support community tourism or small enterprise development, whether that's through legislation or permitting, funding opportunities. Again, the connections to the trade and hosting those kind of trade events to bring those SMEs into that broader. They often just don't have the funds to bring and to go internationally, thinking about, I'm going to the World Travel Market, who could I also bring along to showcase the good that we're doing in our destination. And finally, you know, collaborating with organizations. I mentioned Tourism Cares, that's highlighting local organizations through their meaningful map, on tours through their financing programs of SMEs, and of course I'll plug Planeterra. You know, we provide grants and co-develop community tourism experiences with the travel company partners and hand in hand with the community organizations, and provide grants and training, and so of course always looking for support. So there's lots of organizations you can partner with to broaden your impact.
Yeah, thank you. Definitely a lot of great thought partners in the room here this week. And if anyone's not following along with Planeterra yet, they definitely put out a lot of really valuable, robust resources that can help with guidance on these topics. Nancy, I'll ask you a similar question because you've done a lot of interesting work at the intersection of public and private sectors, like you were speaking to a bit earlier, but any more examples of how those types of partnerships can be leveraged in this space to support SMEs?
Yeah. Well, I wanted to talk about just the power of the partnerships in general, especially since we're talking about climate resiliency. I'm going back to a story again, but I thought I would have fun and ask a question first, just to keep everybody awake. How many of you have just signed an environmental petition? Many of you. How many of you as a business owner has put the name of your business on a letter to Congress? 2. So think about that when I tell this story. So you may remember the drill baby drill era. We're going back to about 2010. And in April of 2010 is when the BP Horizon spill happened in the Gulf. Raise your hand if you remember that little, yeah, okay, everyone remembers that. And think about what impact that had to the tourism sector in the Gulf of Mexico. It was devastating for well over a decade to commercial fishing, recreational fishing, tourism, to the restaurants, and let's not even go to the jobs. And people were hesitant to go there for quite a long time. Well, right before that happened, the Obama administration was looking to open up the mid-Atlantic because it was drill baby drill. There was a lot of demand for energy independence. When that happened, it shifted the perspective of business owners. We do not want that to happen to our seafood restaurants, to our coastline, to our tourism bottom line. And we started seeing an uprising of voices along the mid-Atlantic that were terrified that this was going to happen to their tourism destinations. They wanted to protect the resources that they had. But like the 2 people who raised their hand in the back, most of them are busy running their hotels. They're running their restaurants. They're ordering lobster for next week's Lobster Fest. They have no idea what's going on at Capitol Hill, but we do. And so we talk to our federal legislators all the time to a point where they're sick of hearing from me, and I am not their constituent. They could care less because in Massachusetts, I'm a paid lobbyist, so they know I'm getting paid by my nonprofit to tell them what our funders want to be done. It's a different ball of wax or cup of tea or enchilada when an entire group of chambers of commerce and hotels and restaurant owners go in and lobby their legislators. It's really powerful. So we had I'm gonna ask Claudia, there was a chamber president, Frank Knapp. Where was he from? South Carolina? Super passionate, very vocal, and he was ready. He did not want this in his community. And we went from Frank Knapp and a handful of angry business owners to the Business Alliance for Protecting the Atlantic Coast, which today represents over 45,000 businesses and 500,000 fishing families who stand opposed to expanding offshore drilling on the Atlantic coast. We also then built the Business Alliance for Protecting the Pacific Coast between 2017 and 2020 when the Trump administration started proposing expanding drilling to the entire outer continental shelf everywhere in the entire United States. We went from 0 to over 7,000 businesses in 3 years. There's also the Florida Gulf Coast Business Coalition. So when we write business coalition letters to Congress, we're talking over 100,000 businesses that are standing opposed. Now, a lot of businesses can just give us their name, but some businesses might want to go to a lobby meeting with me. Maybe they want to write a letter to the editor. Maybe you want to write an op-ed. maybe we can help feature your sustainable business and what you're doing to mitigate climate change, to elevate what's happening in your local community. And I have one example of a business owner who went all the way to DC to participate in a lobby day, and he actually testified before House Natural Resources Committee. And it was simply because he cared about this, wanted to get involved, and as a business owner, he could manage his own time. So it doesn't have to be scary. You literally don't have to do anything other than say, I want to protect this resource because it matters to my destination, to my business. But this is that power of partnerships. We have staff in DC that are on Capitol Hill all the time. I'm not a policy expert, but they are. We have scientists, they're experts, but we can help you. So find a nonprofit in your region that's doing the kind of things that you're passionate about, and elevate that work, whether you're messaging about it in your hotel or in your destination marketing, about groups that are doing the right thing to protect your backyard, if that makes sense.
Yeah. That's excellent, thank you.
Yep.
My hope and dream is that everybody leaves this conference, and when your colleagues and families ask you about it, you say you went to an inspiring talk on climate change. Thank you.
Thanks.
And Dylan, I think back to how we kicked off this conversation, can't have a thriving community if only some members are thriving, right? So would love to hear from your perspective as a farmer. What do you think are some big opportunities when it comes to climate justice and equity and inclusion in this space?
Yeah, definitely. You know, food is just such a core part of the human experience, right? And we all eat multiple times a day usually. And so I think, you know, where this really begins for me is just that everybody has the right to good food. And unfortunately, with the way that our systems are set up, that's, you know, a lot of the times that's not the case, right? And so a lot of us are probably really familiar with food deserts and things like that. I've seen some pretty incredible solutions that, you know, nonprofits and farmers markets across Cape Cod have been integrating some really awesome programs into, you know, the way that they take different forms of financial assistance when it comes to food, and how, you know, those dollars can really be multiplied so that people who are struggling can really have access to, you know, good, fresh, local food. You know, I also think kind of, you know, paired with the right to access good food, I think is the right, you know, to know about good food and to know about good food production. And like one of the things that we're really excited about with Love Farms is that we're going to be able to, you know, give people an experience where they can actually come on to a working farm and they can learn in a very quick, you know, tour. They can be exposed to food production, you know, both on the kind of, you know, vegetable and crop side, but also on the livestock side. And, you know, this is really important to me because, like I was saying before, you know, we're very disconnected from our food. And so thinking about getting into food production, or at least just being familiar enough with how food is produced, you know, even that has been, you know, kind of taken away from a lot of people. And a lot of people haven't really had great ways to access that kind of an experience. And so we're really excited to, you know, be able to give that kind of an experience to all people in our community that are able to make it down to our place. And yeah, and I think another great way, you know, is you know, in terms of partnerships, is like we're really seeking out, you know, the local small businesses, the family businesses that often kind of get overlooked when it comes to, you know, procurement and purchasing. And, you know, so we're really seeking those kinds of partnerships out. And, yeah, it's you know, it's very complicated, but, you know, we are really trying to create an experience that is accessible to everybody. You know, we are trying to make, yeah, our restaurant experience as accessible as possible, and the farm as well.
Thank you. You're all very cool. I'm sure that the audience has questions for you, so I want to make sure we're saving some time for that. But before we turn it over, does anybody have any closing thoughts that you haven't shared yet, or any projects in the space you'd like to highlight?
Sure, I'd love to just share a couple of concrete examples of some of the communities around the world that are leveraging tourism to support their livelihoods and nature restoration efforts. So one example is in the high Atlas Mountains of Morocco called Akridge Village. And they're a community-managed tree nursery and has planted roughly 360,000 trees. They focus on income-generating trees like olive, pomegranate, and fig. And so they have a dual purpose of providing a kind of economic stability for local farmers, but they also, and they distribute saplings to local farmers as well. And then they provide job opportunities for local women who manage the nursery. And then there's a tourism experience where people visit the village, visit the tree nursery, have a meal, learn about also traditional handicrafts and so on. So it's kind of connecting all of those pieces to keep it going. In an organization in Madagascar called Soazara, they're trying to recreate wildlife habitats and create economic opportunities as well for the community to manage the reforestation efforts. So they are planting a variety of tree species native to the area, and then the tourism experience is also about visiting the cooperative, learning about what they're trying to do, having a meal, etc., and supporting that. And then just one last one of many, Amba Estate in Sri Lanka. It's they're focused also on income-earning trees, basically trying to maximize local income while preserving and restoring the local ecosystem. And they offer various activities. They have accommodation, they have a tea plantation, they do fruit preserves, and so travelers are going to experience all of their kind of community cultural as well as nature restoration activities. And then they are also one of our, we call tree growing partners that the travel industry is investing in right now in destination to do some kind of broader restoration efforts. So yeah, just a few from the field.
Just a few things going on. Thank you. Anything else to close out, Nancy or Dylan?
I want to definitely thank Wes and Crest and Jill and Adam and the group from Care for the Cape and Islands, because this is awesome. I like hearing these actors in the room and the passion that you have for this. Like, it's already, we're in the right direction. We need like 20 million more of you. So thank you for just caring. Oceana has a business coalition for the oceans, so if anyone's interested in learning about more, the person who manages that out of DC is standing right there. Please raise your hand, Claudia. So you can opt in or out of any of the ocean advocacy work that we do across the United States. So we would love to talk to you and give you opportunities of how you could get more engaged. We also, I'm going to challenge the folks in the room. If you've never used your business voice before, we have a business sign-on letter for an act, a federal act called the Reuse Act, which directs the EPA to create a report on reuse and refill systems in the United States, looking at what types and methods of reuse and refill are possible, the job creation potential around the sector of reuse and refill, and barriers to implementing reuse. You're seeing it here at the Pelham. I'm so excited to not see plastic cups, plastic straws. All your cutlery is metal and washed. And we should not be going from plastic to some other disposable item. We have to go back to reuse and refill, so just thank you to the Pelham. And just how this type of adaptation is supported, I don't know if you were gonna ask that question or not, but I would close with giving communities more decision-making power, because we're seeing at the federal level how hard it is for us to get certain things done right now. So the power of getting things done in your own community is so powerful, and incorporating that local knowledge and power back into future state and federal planning. But leaning on our state and federal legislators to include our local knowledge of what's working, particularly here on Cape Cod, who's kind of leading the way because of our limited resources. They should apply that to the entire state and the United States and beyond. So, thank you.
Well said. Love a good challenge. Dylan, anything from you to close out?
Yeah, just one more quick story. I would love to just highlight this this partnership. So we've been partnered with a local nonprofit called the Family Table Collaborative since our inception. Our businesses started at the same time. They saw a need in 2020, when COVID was going on, that there were a lot of people in this Cape Cod community that were dealing with food insecurity. And so they bought the old Riverway Lobster House right over in South Yarmouth, only just a couple miles from here. And so they operate out of a restaurant building, and they use that commercial kitchen to take a ton of different food donations from all kinds of farms and food companies, and they turn that food into ready-to-eat, meals in microwave-safe containers. And then they have a network of hundreds of volunteers that then are prepping the food and then distribute them all over Cape Cod, and they're available, free. You don't need to, show need in any way. And there's lots of different amazing organizations that are helping to distribute that food. And we've been partnered with them from the very beginning, specifically in the area of food waste, because from the beginning they wanted to be able to compost the food that they weren't able to prepare into meals, because they get a lot of donations, so they get a lot of food that's kind of like right at the end of its life. And so they have been doing an incredible job in expanding their operation over the years. They now have an incredible relationship with our Whole Foods. So there's just one Whole Foods on Cape Cod. It's in Hyannis. And they take, I believe it's about 7 days a week, they get donations from Whole Foods. And that's where a lot of the produce for those meals is coming from. And then we are on the composting side of things. So we do a little bit of sorting. Our livestock get incredible supplements to their diet. And then what we can't feed to the livestock, we are turning into compost, and that is one of our biggest inputs on an organic vegetable farm is, compost. And so we get to make that, and so it's just this really incredible kind of way to close the loop, and addresses just one more aspect that is really, really huge in terms of climate change when it comes to the food system, is that about a third of the food that we produce in this country is wasted, and most of that is currently ending up in landfills where it's turning into methane gas. And so composting is just such an amazing way to solve that, and to kind of put those nutrients where they belong, back into the soil, so that they can, so that our soils can continue to be as great of a carbon sink as possible. And so just kind of wanted to highlight that, and just to have everybody, kind of thinking a little bit more about food, where it's coming from, how it's grown, and, when we can't eat it, where it's ending up.
Thank you. Plenty of actionable and community-led solutions and stories, so thanks for sharing. Wes, do we have time for a question, or are we cut off? Okay, one question. Does anyone have one question? No? Otherwise, y'all are off the hook, I think. Okay, we can call it. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Laura.